Hey, welcome to worshiptutorials.com. Today we have a collab video with Matt McQueen. He is a professional front of house sound engineer, recording engineer. Do you do mixing and you mastering and all that stuff as well, Matt?
I do mixing. I don't master very much. But yeah, I do mixing in my studio.
And Matt, where are you based from?
So my studio is actually in a small town up in the mountains called Jellicoe, Tennessee, and the church that I'm the staff front of house engineer at is actually in London, Kentucky.
So Matt has a YouTube channel called Capsule to Cone, where they do everything sound engineering. What all kind of content do you cover on your YouTube channel? Link below, by the way. Go subscribe.
We do recording, mixing. My partner in the YouTube channel, David, he does some mastering content, and then we also do gear reviews, music production, so kind of anything that would happen from the microphone capsule to the speaker cone.
So Matt, thank you so much for collabing with us on this video. In this video, we're talking 5 tips for front of house sound engineers, the sound guy, the sound girl, the sound person at your church. 5 things that are important for them to know, understand, and execute when running sound at their church. So Matt, I'm going to throw it to you. What's tip number 1?
Tip number 1, this one is kind of near and dear to my heart, and I think it comes from being a studio engineer, but it's tune the drums. I've been to a dozen churches, maybe more, where I walk in on Sunday morning and the drums are just not out of tune, or the only way that they can even make them tolerable is to just have tons and tons of tape or cotton or whatever on top of the head. And that is a sound, but usually it's not a very good sound. And I think because of spending so much time learning to tune drums because I wanted to get really good drum sounds in the studio, it became really important for me to also do that in a live setting. And I think when I first started this job here at the Creek, one of the things that sort of secured my position a few years ago was nobody here really tuned the drums, and I wasn't happy with the drum sounds, and our worship leader, Zach, really wanted better sounding drums from front of house, and so I took it upon myself to rehead the kit and to always make sure that they were tuned and sounding as good as we possibly could get them, and I think that that is going to help you really make your mixes a lot better in the long run.
Yeah, so drums being such a foundational piece of the overall sound of the music. Now, I'm a guitar player here at Worship Tutorials. Our heads are in guitar land most of the time.
Sure.
And so we understand and we build products around tone for guitar.
Yeah.
And so what you're talking about tone for drums, basically, right? I mean, the way they sound.
Sure.
And we always say it too. It's like, if your guitar doesn't sound good, going in, like if the source doesn't sound, it's not going to sound good in the mix. There's no magic formula. Polished turd is still a turd, right? That's what they say.
Yeah, no amount of EQ or compression is going to save you from poorly tuned drums. They're just going to sound like poorly tuned drums with a lot of EQ scoop on them or something.
Yes. So one more question for you, Matt, regarding point number 1 when it comes to drums. I know a lot of churches, many places where I serve and have served as well, are using electronic or virtual drums, like a Roland kit, something like that. Does this apply, or how does it apply to an electronic kit?
I think the application here is to make sure that you're taking the time to find the sounds that are going to suit your room and also the style of music, that you're going for with your worship band. Because there are sort of multiple subgenres in worship, and so I would argue that there's probably different types of drum sounds, and I would lean towards something that is going to let you also maybe even use aftermarket samples. There's so many good things out there from people like Slate and I Want That Sound, even Get Good Drums I've used on some worship songs that I've mixed. So I think that you can, I think that probably the application there is that if you're using electronic drums, don't just dial up preset, what arena rock or whatever it is, and just go with that for Sunday morning because it was like, I think those sound like drums. You want to spend the time there.
Test and compare your gear. That's your tip number 2. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, so this is sort of like the, addendum tip to the first tip, but it's kind of across all of your gear. I can think of 2 specific situations where this really benefited me. We have 8 different wireless handhelds here, and we probably have 9 or 10 different capsules to choose from that we've sort of collected over the years as we've been building up our our rig at the church, and we took both our male and female main worship leaders and spent the time to go through every one of those capsules and find out which one's the best one that's suited for their voice. And I was really surprised because for a long time we had been using on our main male worship leader, the Shure KSM9, which is a really expensive capsule. And at the end of the day, we chose the SE Electronics V7, which is super affordable, $99. I think you can get that capsule to put on top of your Shure or Sennheiser wireless. So that was the first tip. And then the second was the day that we got a Kemper floor in here, we spent the time going through our Tyler backline amps that we'd had for years and comparing and contrasting to see, like, which do we prefer? I think I still prefer the Tyler, but that might be because I'm an old man and I just love real amps. But in the mix, honestly, the Kemper has some really great sounds. And after we did that test, it really made it a lot easier to push faders up on Kempers and be like, yeah, these are good sounding guitars.
Much more consistent. Oh, we could talk for a long time, Matt, about Kemper versus amps versus Helix versus Axe effects. Anyway, we're not going there.
It's a hot button.
So when you say test your gear, I think when most people hear test your gear, they think make sure everything actually works, which is important. But you're talking about test out what sounds the best for individual sources. And that is also very important.
Yeah.
Probably
absolutely.
Step number one is make sure your cable works. But after you figure out the cable works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Find out which microphone fits your vocalist best.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's number 3?
Number 3 is more of a mindset tip. I was thinking about how live mixing and studio mixing are not that different. And so I think the tip here is that there's some practice to be had even away from virtual sound check or from the room that you're mixing in by taking, a DAW, even if you're just getting a free license and downloading plugin trials and learning how to hear and understand multi-band compression or just, regular compressors, understanding what they're doing with the attack and the release, because we have a lot of power available to us with digital consoles, even with something that is, widely used and super affordable like the X32. That is a powerful, powerful desk when you compare, even, just 12, 15 years ago to something like, just a Mackie, 24/8 console or whatever it was that a lot of us were using in church situations. There's a lot of power at our fingertips now, and then the more that you start to learn and understand how to use that stuff appropriately, you're going to open up the floodgates to things like, and this isn't a commercial, but open up the floodgates to things like waves processing and being able to use, tuning plugins or distortion and saturation plugins to really augment the sounds that are going into your mixer. And, practicing with those things in sort of a studio setting is going to really help you. I think it's one of the things that has helped me to understand how to do this job really, really well. Yeah. They go hand in hand more than ever, in my opinion.
Yes. So I have run live sound a handful of times, and I'm not a live sound person, but I have mixed, thousands, you could say, of projects in the box in a studio type of a setting. And immediately my knowledge of how EQ and compression works transferred. It's the same thing, just in a different room, essentially. Mm-hmm. So, Matt, you have a ton of resources on your YouTube channel to help people understand how to mix sound. Yeah. And so please go check that out. Are there, do you know of any other places out there people can go just to learn more about mixing, but that have a practical way that they can apply it? I have a few that I'm thinking of. Do you have any that you would send people? Where would you send people?
I love watching Dave Ratt's channel. If you've never watched that, when it comes to live sound, Dave Ratt's the front of house engineer that's toured with the Chili Peppers for years, and he's got Rat Sound, this huge, amazing company. And so, actually, the headphones that I've been using in the studio and live for the past, since probably 2008, are because of a really, really old, it's probably standard definition if it's still up, Dave Ratt video where he is going through all these different headphones and testing them out with a signal generator and an RTA mic. So very cool resource there. I think Dave Ratt's channel is good if you want to learn more about live sound.
The one that I have really enjoyed is, and you can do it for free for a limited time. You mentioned Slate Audio or Slate Digital, Stephen Slate. they make a subscription service for plugins that are pretty popular. I use them. Do you use Slate plugins?
All the time, yeah. It was one of the
They're
first
good.
subscriptions that I ended up buying when I was just starting to make a little money at this. So
nice. And so you can do a free trial. I think it's 2 weeks. And with that free trial, he gives you access to a full song that you can download. And the one that I chose was from Chris Lord-Alge, CLA. So he is a very famous mixing engineer that you have heard his records time and time again if you listen to music in general, or at least rock music. And so there is a full session you can download for a wide range of DAWs, of DAWs. And CLA just goes through and does and shows you exactly what he would do on every channel to build a full mix. It's a fantastic learning resource. It'll take you a little bit of time, but something like that teaches you a lot in a pretty condensed amount of time. And I've really enjoyed doing that. It's really shown me a lot. So that's just another resource you can get that's free for at least a limited amount of time.
Another really good one is Sound Gym, and I think that also has a free trial that you can try out.
Nice.
There's some free games. It's basically like ear training games to help you hear frequencies and compression and EQ cuts and boosts. So it's a really cool one.
Tip number 4. What do you got?
You can win the band over by being meticulous about mixing their monitors. A lot of us are switching to in-ear monitors these days. And it's very easy to pull the old sound guy trick of, hey, can you give me a little bit more of my monitor? And you just lean down and go, oh, yeah, I got you. And then you don't do anything because you're messing with something else and you don't want to fool with it. And we've probably all done that a time or two, and we shouldn't. But, really, when you take the time to take care of the band, they're going to feel like that they're appreciated being up on stage. And they're going to, it's going to help them to do a better job if they're not sitting there, thinking about the sound guy hates me. He never fixes my monitors for me. We want them to be focusing on worship because they're on stage, leading the rest of us. So it's going to help them to do their job. I think if you really spend the time trying to help them get their monitors right.
That is like a paradigm shift kind of a thing, because how many of you watching this, I can think of many times, Matt, you can probably think of many times too, where there's such a level of animosity between the back of the house and the front of the house, right?
Yep.
The people on the platform versus the sound engineer or the production. There's a lot of tension a lot of time. There's a lot of I feel like there's probably a jealousy kind of a aspect at play. Maybe that's a topic for another video, because sound engineers make a lot of stuff happen and can make or break the way something sounds. But it is a thankless job. Am I right?
Oh yeah.
In many cases, especially from the congregation, because if you do your job well, you go unnoticed. Like if you mess up, everyone knows.
Yeah, everybody does that real quick if you mess up. Yeah.
And so anyway, I don't want to keep going down that road, but I appreciate the fact that you bring this up, because it's the attitude of a servant, kind of, not that you're serving the band, but it's just an attitude that we're all in this thing together. Yeah. And if the musicians feel more comfortable and can hear themselves well, they will give you, as a sound person, a better, they'll give you a better performance.
So number 5, I wanted to do at least one super practical, put this into practice kind of a tip. And I want to say a little caveat before I start this, because we have a tendency on the internet to take things as, this guy just gave me a rule and there's no rules because it's music. So it's not a rule. It's not a rule, but I do think it's a really helpful guideline. And that is to cut some EQ first before you start boosting. A lot of times, if you want a sound to be a little bit brighter and you find the muddy, honky, murky frequencies, there's going to be more perceived brightness because you got rid of that muddiness. But it is a very dicey situation, because the truth is that there are some situations where you're going to be like, no, I want all that mid-range, and I know that I just need to boost it. But I think the wisdom behind the tip is that both of those things come with experience. And 4 years ago, if I was putting this into practice, cutting before I was boosting. It might have been that I was just following a rule because I thought that was the right thing to do. But, on this side of 4 years of being in the professional world and doing this week in and week out, I think that I've probably learned. I'd hope to think that I've learned a little bit, and I'm going to give the credit to just practicing and practicing and practicing. So don't take this as a rule, but I do think that it's a good practice because sometimes that's all you need is maybe a little bit of a cut and no boosts at all.
All right, Matt, I have a follow-up tip. We have a bonus number 6 tip for everybody watching out there. All right, and this one comes from my perspective as a worship leader. So I think, Matt, most of these tips from your perspective have been from a sound engineering perspective, right?
Yeah.
You as the front of house engineer. So, and we've made content here at Worship Tutorials about sound. Actually, it might be in the worship manual. So maybe you haven't seen it if you haven't purchased the worship manual. But talking about the relationship between front of house or production, sound engineering, and the worship leader or whoever's in charge of what the music sounds like in your church. So I'm going to, for this, assume that if you're the worship leader, that you are the one that sort of is dictating the vision of what worship sounds like in your church. And so for sound people, for sound engineers, it's important to remember that your own personal biases, what you think the sound should sound like, should be secondary to what leadership in your church wants stuff to sound like. Mm-hmm. And I have, everywhere I've ever led or been, and in every case, there are typically multiple people, whether they're staff or volunteers or part-time, that run sound. Everyone does it their way, and they think their way is the best way, and they're all different. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is important that I believe it's important that we fall under a unified vision of leadership from the church. This is what we want the worship experience to sound like. And as a sound engineer, it's your job to execute that. It's not your job to come in and say, I like it this way, so this week I'm running it this way.
Yeah,
that's my
absolutely.
tip. As a worship leader, I might have stepped on some toes a little bit, but I don't care. It's fine.
You might have, but I think you're absolutely right. And I think if I can just piggyback one little thing on there, I would say that as the sound guy, you will find that you get more freedom to be able to try different things, or to be able to experiment with different things, or even get some budget maybe to try some gear out that you are wanting to add to your church to try to make things better.
Imagine.
If you're a team if you're a team player, get the worship leader on board, build that relationship. I mean, that's really what we're here for on Sunday mornings, is to build relationships with other people and fellow believers, and bring people that aren't believers into the fold, and all of those things are important. And I think having a selfish attitude is so counterintuitive to that. And so it's a very easy place to start with your worship leader, is to just get on board with what he wants and to try to or she wants to try to help them to capture that vision. And that's going to open up so many doors for you in your ministry as the sound tech.
You make a fine point. All right. Again, check out A Capsule to Cone on YouTube. Link below. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing from your wisdom, doing something that you do on a professional level. Really appreciate it. You have anything else to share with us here at Worship Tutorials?
Just very, very thankful for this opportunity. Thankful to you for having me on, and leave some comments below. I'll be lurking in the comments as Capsule to Cone, and would love to get questions from the community and try to help people if there's anything that I can be helpful with.
Awesome. Thanks again. See you guys in the next one. If you have not subscribed to the channel, this is your moment of glory. This is the time. This is when you should make it happen. Push the button. Hit the bell icon. What do they say, Matt? Smash that like button.
Smash it.
Is that
whatever? I don't know how to do that. Yeah, I look like someone's dad. I am someone's dad, but I'd smash it. Yeah.
Do it. See you next time. Bye-bye.